What if the reason you feel anxious, frustrated, and emotionally exhausted is not because life is against you, but because you believe things should happen on your timeline, in your way, instead of in life's timing and life's way? Somewhere along the way, you may have started believing that if love takes time, if success is delayed, or if healing feels slow, then something must be wrong. But what if nothing is actually wrong? What if things are simply unfolding differently from the way you imagined? What if the real pain comes from resisting divine timing and trying to control what was never meant to be forced? The truth is, some of the most important things in life do not arrive when your ego demands them. They arrive when you are ready to receive them, when the lesson has done its work, and when unseen things have aligned in ways your mind could never have predicted. That is why trusting divine timing is not just a comforting spiritual phrase. It is a life-changing way of seeing your life. Because the moment you stop seeing delay as punishment and start seeing it as divine preparation, everything begins to shift. Your fear softens, your heart becomes steadier, you feel cared for, and your journey starts to make sense in a whole new way. In this video, you will see how trusting the universe, practicing patience and trust, and choosing surrender and faith can bring more inner peace than forcing ever could. If you have been feeling lost, discouraged, or quietly wondering whether life forgot about you, this message may land at exactly the right moment, because sometimes what looks like a delay is the very thing preparing you for a life that fits more deeply than anything you were trying to rush. Struggling to trust divine timing is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of being human. Deep down, you may have been taught that if life is not moving fast, something must be going wrong. And little by little, impatience starts whispering that you are behind. That is usually where peace begins to slip away, not because life has failed you, but because fear has convinced you that delay means danger. You can be doing everything right and still feel unsettled when nothing seems to move. You pray, work hard, try to stay positive, and still wonder why the job has not come, why the relationship has not worked out, or why spiritual healing feels slower than expected. That is when your mind starts chasing control, and your heart forgets how to practice faith over fear. And when that happens, anxiety can trick you into feeling like worry is helping, as if stressing over it could somehow make things happen faster. But it cannot. It only makes waiting feel heavier, and it clouds the quiet wisdom that comes from learning to trust the process. What makes this even harder is comparison. You see other people getting married, buying homes, launching businesses, or finally making it, and you start assuming that everything good seems to happen for other people. But that is often the moment life begins teaching one of its deepest lessons. Trusting divine timing is less about passively waiting and more about learning how to stay grounded while the unseen pieces come together. And once that truth starts to settle in, you begin to see things from a different perspective. What if this is not rejection at all? What if it is only a delay? You may assume that when something does not happen quickly, it means life is saying no. But sometimes it is not a denial at all. It is simply a delay. And those two are not the same thing. Sometimes you may think a dream is dead when, in reality, it is simply not ripe yet. That is one of the hardest parts of trusting the universe. Learning that silence does not always mean absence, and stillness does not always mean the door is closed. There are seasons when you are being protected from receiving something too soon, something you would not yet know how to carry. A relationship can arrive before emotional maturity, and instead of becoming a blessing, it can become chaos, with two people trying to force something they are not yet ready to build together. That is why divine guidance often works behind the scenes, preparing your character before the results arrive. What feels like nothing is happening may actually be life teaching you patience and trust. Because some blessings need stronger foundations than your mind first imagined. One practical way to see the difference is to start asking, what is this waiting period trying to build in me? That simple but powerful question can make a big difference. If you are waiting for clarity in your career, you might use that time to build a new skill so you can become the professional you are meant to be. If you are waiting for love, you might use that time to learn how to enjoy your own company. And once you begin to notice that some pauses are actually protection, a deeper truth starts to emerge. Maybe the real suffering is not in the waiting itself, but in the desperate need to control every part of life. A lot of suffering begins the moment you decide that peace will only come once life obeys your timeline. You may not notice it at first, because control often disguises itself as responsibility, ambition, or just trying to make things happen. But underneath it, there is usually fear. Fear of loss, fear of being left behind, fear of the unknown. So you grip tighter, overthink more, and try to force outcomes that are not ready. This shows up in everyday life more than you may realize. You may keep texting someone who has clearly gone cold, hoping that one more message will bring them back to you. Or you may refresh your email 20 times a day, hoping it will somehow make that job interview update come faster. You may think that control equals safety, but more often it only leaves you exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that can slowly lead to burnout or even a breakdown. It pulls you out of surrender and faith, the very things that help you stay grounded and move with life instead of against it. And once you begin to soften your need to control, you become ready to understand something deeper, what divine timing really means. You may hear divine timing and imagine it means sitting still, doing nothing, and hoping life magically works itself out. But that is not really it. Trusting divine timing is not passive or disconnected from real life. It is having the humility to accept that life has rhythms and that not everything can be rushed. Sometimes things are being aligned in ways you cannot yet see, and what looks slow on the surface is actually deep preparation underneath. In real life, divine timing often means growth is happening in 3 places at once: within you, within the situation, and within the unseen connections around you. Maybe you are becoming emotionally ready for what you asked for. Maybe another person involved still has lessons to learn. Maybe a closed path is making room for something better that you would have missed if the first door had opened too fast. That is why trusting the universe is often less about having all the answers and more about believing there is movement even when the evidence is not obvious. Pause for a moment and try to remember a time when things did not happen in the way or at the time you wanted. Then after some time had passed, life showed you the bigger picture and you were finally able to understand why it had to happen that way. Maybe you even said to yourself, "Oh, now I understand why that did not happen when I wanted it to." You do not wake up excited to be in a chapter where answers are delayed and nothing seems to move at the speed you hoped for. But this is often where some of the deepest personal growth happens, because waiting has a way of revealing what noise used to hide. It shows you where fear still speaks loudly, where your identity still depends on outcomes, and where your soul is being invited into spiritual healing. During these seasons, you often gain clarity you would have missed if life had moved faster. You begin to notice patterns, question old habits, and see how urgency has been running the show for far too long. This is where patience and trust start becoming more than pretty words. They become lived experience. The waiting season does not only test your faith, it strengthens it, deepens it, and teaches you how to trust the process without falling apart. To cope better with the waiting period, you can start journaling with questions like, "What is this experience trying to teach me?" You can also create small rituals that support inner peace and help regulate your emotions, like morning walks, 10 minutes of prayer or gratitude, or simply taking a deep breath before reacting. Once you begin to see waiting as preparation instead of punishment, you become much more able to stay calm, even when life still feels wildly uncertain. When life feels uncertain, the mind rarely stays in the present. Your body is here, but your thoughts are already 3 weeks ahead, rehearsing problems that may not even happen. Or your mind drifts back into the past, replaying an old moment that filled you with worry or anxiety. But this is not the future, and it is not the past. This is a new moment unfolding in your life right now. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is return to the present. Because when you come back to what is here, you can make the best decision for yourself. One of the most practical ways to trust the process is to bring life back down to what can actually be handled today. If you are anxious about money, for example, you may not be able to solve your entire future in one afternoon, but you can review your budget, cut one unnecessary expense, and make one wise next move. If you feel lost in life, you may not have all the answers yet, but you can go for a quiet walk, meditate, connect with the divine, the universe, or whatever feels sacred to you. Write down what you do know and ask for divine guidance instead of spiraling. This is where faith over fear becomes real. Sometimes the clearest sign that you are being prepared is that life stops cooperating with who you used to be. At first, that can feel almost like abandonment. But often, it is not punishment at all. It is divine timing pulling you out of places, patterns, and expectations that no longer match who you are becoming. What feels like loss may actually be divine guidance in disguise. Redirection is one of the biggest signs of this. You apply for something you deeply want and get rejected, only to find months later that the no protected you from a toxic environment or led you to something far better aligned. This is why trusting the universe can feel so difficult in real time. The lesson rarely comes with a neat label that says, "Relax, this disappointment is part of your healing journey." A powerful question to ask in these moments is, what if this closed door is creating space instead of taking something away? That one question can soften panic and open your perspective. When you look back on your life, you may realize that some of your greatest setbacks became turning points in your personal growth, even though they made no sense at the time. And when that truth starts to sink in, your heart becomes more open to the next step, understanding how surrender and faith can lead you into real peace. A lot of people hear those words and assume they mean weakness or giving up, but real surrender and faith are not weakness at all. They are the quiet strength of no longer fighting every moment that does not go according to plan. They are the choice to stop living in constant urgency and start trusting divine timing. And that shift alone can feel like finally putting down a heavy weight your soul was never meant to carry. When you learn to surrender, you stop believing that safety comes from controlling everything. You start to see that peace does not come from forcing answers, but from staying grounded while life unfolds. You can still take action, you can still have goals, you can still care deeply, but now you move through life from trust instead of desperation. And that is where inner peace begins to grow, not because life becomes perfect, but because fear is no longer leading every decision. At some point, you have to decide whether you will keep living in fear, forcing timelines, chasing certainty, and exhausting yourself trying to control what only life can unfold, or whether you will finally choose to trust divine timing. Because the truth is, peace begins when you stop asking, "Why is this taking so long?" and start asking, "What is this season trying to teach me?" That question changes everything. It shifts your heart out of panic and into wisdom. And little by little, what once felt like punishment starts to look a lot more like preparation. So now I want to invite you to try a simple challenge for the next 7 days. Each day, whenever you feel the urge to force or over-control a situation, pause and say to yourself, I choose to trust divine timing. Then take a deep breath and release the rest. At the end of the week, come back and leave a comment sharing how it went. And if you are ready to go even deeper, I invite you to watch Detach from Control and Reclaim Your Peace. Because sometimes, the peace you have been searching for begins the moment you stop trying to hold everything so tightly. If this video helped you, share it with a friend who may need this message too. And if you love content like this, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and keep walking this journey of growth and trust, one intentional step at a time.